Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Hazards of the Old Ones, Part 3, Chapter 13, The Shadow Tech Conspiracy. So last week we went through 3 chapters, all of them pretty short. The Seeker finally arrives at planet Xandar, infiltrates via force of arms Xandarr Keep, which is the fastness of the House of Xandar, basically the ruling castle or temple of Xandar, and they find absolutely nothing. They don't see shit, which is very odd. As they penetrate deeper into the keep, there's nobody, and they enter the great dining hall where the House of Xandar took its meals, where Princess Marlith once took her meals. Find nothing, but then Davage sees in his sight, in deep paint, an illusion is cast over this room, and through great effort, Davage is able to pick through it with his sight, and he eventually sees what is actually there. And at the great table is the House of Xandar. It's the king, Xezru, his wife Xanthippe, and 10 of their children. They had 11, but one of them is gone. Princess Marlith is reportedly dead, leaving 10 children. So 10 are all there. They were horribly murdered, strangled. Their desiccating corpses are blowing in the breeze, as the hall was mostly open air out to the elements. Xandar is a very warm and dry planet, and so a lot of the keep is open to the elements. There's sand and grit, indications that birds have been feeding upon these dead bodies, which calls into question Captain Davage had spoken to the king, King Xezru, and his wife Xanthippe on 2 occasions. So what was he speaking to, since the king has been in this chair dead for quite some time? Obviously he was speaking to a painted illusion or a construct of some sort. Who is responsible for those illusions or those constructs? It's not really known. It's looking like probably the Black Hats. And if we recall, to the beginning of the book, when the Duke captured Tori Jane of Wham, when she was still a despicable Black Hat painter, she was hard at work on Xandar, creating complicated illusions and depositing quantities of shadow tech. That's what she was doing on Xandar, if you remember, which I hope you do. So this plan that is coming into fruition, all those painted illusions, all that shadow tech, seems to be culminating up to that. So as the chapter ends, Captain Davage had detected the House of Xandar all dead. Keep this in mind as we go forward. Only Captain Davage can see the room as it really is. Everyone else, Kai, Sig, Lieutenant Larson is there, Lieutenant Kylos is there with Tweeter. Only Captain Davage can see what's actually going on. Everyone else sees an empty room and an empty table and empty chairs. So keep that in mind as we continue on. Also, we see what happened to Carahil. He was captured by the despicable Lord Hershey of Milton. He's got him in a magic circle and wants to extract all of Carahil's secrets, even if he has to vivisect him to do it. That's where we are. This is a fairly, not terribly long chapter, but we'll learn more information as the chapter unfolds. So let's begin immediately. Time for me to shut the hell up, and we will press on. Chapter 13, The Shadow Tech Conspiracy. So what do you think, Father? Davage heard a voice say in his thoughts. He turned. In his sight, he could see Princess Vrock standing there at the far end of the room, deep in illusion, and very much alive. The chair where she had previously been sitting was now empty. She looked off color, like an ancient photographic negative. Her left arm was wrapped, badly mangled from Sig's Silvertech blast. "Princess, what have you done?" The princess walked up to the table and giggled. "What have I done? Father, isn't it obvious?" "Who are you talking to, Dav?" Sig asked, whirling around. "It's Princess Vrock. She wasn't dead." Her expression was exaggerated, strange, as if she wasn't all there. Her long, sleepy eyes twitched. Her sanity was questionable. Princess, when did you kill your family?" "Several years ago," Princess Vrock said. "I fell upon them as they slept. I strangled them one after the other. I took my time, too. I wanted their dying to last. They're not dead, though. I still hear them talking to me, laughing at me." "Why, Princess? Your family?" Larson and Inez stood with weapons at the ready. Sig held on to Dav, not liking this situation one bit. Kai stood close by, covering their rear against enemies she could not see or hear. She swallowed and held her SK tight. "Tweeter," she said, "get in my holster." Dutifully, Tweeter flew into her holster and didn't come out. "My family hates me," Vrock said. "They've always hated me. They hate me because I tried to kill them. You heard the illusions. They spoke truthfully. I am the 11th daughter, the unlucky daughter, the worthless daughter. All of Xandar hates me." She paused a moment and pawed at her head. "You bound me into prostitution when I was a mere child. And when I failed at that, you sold my flesh to a meat market. I hung from a hook. Father plied with drugs to keep me quiet and fresh, and I hung on that hook, waiting to be bought and eaten. That's when they came. Black hats. The one with the eyes like a cat got me off the hook. They wanted revenge on Xandar for Marlith's folly. They wanted Xandar's blood, and what better way to get it than with the help of the 11th daughter? They took me back and made me mighty, and that's when I did it. That's when I tried to kill them all. They're hiding from me, and I miss them. I miss you too, Father." "So what now? What is next, Princess?" "Black Hats are very angry. They hate everybody. They're gonna kill this whole planet. Nothing will live, nothing will crawl. They wish to show any who have the courage to look what happens to those who cross the Black Hats. The Black Hats wanted your harlot father and your sister, but they were afraid of you, afraid of your light. I was to bring you here so they could have you trussed up and dead. It was so easy. You are so predictable. I can take you away, Father, but your harlot and your sister and your vessel are all to die here. I can protect you, Father, but the Black Hats demand their blood, and I am going to give it to them. It's for the best. Don't try to stop me. You only make it worse." She drew her Baron and approached Larson with a diabolical look on her face. "Lieutenant, back away to your left. Everybody get behind me," he shouted, raising his carg to the guard position. Larson moved, and quick as lightning, Vrock sprung, bringing her Baron around to apply a killing stroke. Davage jumped between Vrock and Larson, his carg blunting her attack. "Princess, there is still time to stop this, to end this. You needn't walk this road. Let us help you." "Oh, but I must," the princess said. "Have you ever hung from a meat hook, Father, knowing your whole life was worth nothing than the savor of your own flesh? You hung me on a hook. Why, Father, why? I hate you. I forgive you." The princess, slavering, started moving towards Sig. "Princess, you were treated terribly. I acknowledge that. No daughter is unlucky. No daughter is worthless. But that does not give you lease to commit murder. Please come with us and end this now. We will help you." Vrock brandished her Baron and sprung at Sig. Davage flashed his carg and engaged Vrock, the black negative image of her Baron appearing clearly in his sight. Carg and Baron met and held. Dav, what is going on? Sig cried. Sig, back away, get away, he yelled. Kai hammered her SK and fired in the direction where she thought the princess might be. The blast sailed over her head, and she giggled. You missed. Dav, tell me where she is. Guide me, she shouted. She looked at her holster. Tweeter, Princess Vrock is here under cloak. Point her out. Tweeter launched out of her holster and after a moment was fluttering over an area right in front of Davage. Kai moved to get into good firing position. She was going to put an end to her right here and now. Vrock looked at the fluttering silver bird. There's a demon, father. I'll send it away. And with 2 quick movements of her baron, she had Tweeter in 3 pieces, the oddly sized chunks flapping to the floor, spinning in a death dance, where they went over the side to the courtyards below. Tweeter! Kai cried, dismayed. You're gonna die, bitch! She slathered. Grinning, Vrock turned her blade to Kai and sent it streaking towards her throat. Davage quickly met it. As Davage and the princess crossed weapons, he saw out of the corner of his eye a dark figure sneaking up on Lieutenant Larson. Duck! Lieutenant, duck! He cried. Behind you! Larson swung blindly with his great door, bisecting the figure, a black hat, and she fell. Davage took his eye off the princess for a moment, and she put a massive left cross into his cheek, full strength, an incredible punch from such a tiny girl. He staggered a bit, and then parried the Baron again, just in time to see another figure sneaking up on Kai. Black hats were climbing up into the great hall from below. Kai, duck! Duck! Kai hit the deck and fired her SK, again in the wrong direction. The figure rose over her and raised an ugly set of black claws into the air. Davage tried to disengage and come to her aid, and the princess again walloped him, sending him toppling. Behind you! He shouted, his mouth full of blood. Kai! Larson whirled and threw his great door. Energized, it sailed over Kai's head and buried itself in the black hat's chest, knocking her off the ledge of the hall into the courtyards below. Davage, standing, watching the skewered black hat go over the side, was just barely able to parry the princess yet again, his karg just stopping her deadly baron from entering his throat. They whirled and went at it, the princess's light, fast baron against his large, heavy karg. This was a situation Davage wasn't used to. He could normally move his karg fast enough and quickly enough to end any sword fight he got into, but this Princess Vrock was a whole different thing. She was a master and was devilishly fast. She was clearly the best swordsman he'd ever faced, and she was obviously out of her mind, fighting with a lunatic's skill. As they crossed weapons, Sig and Kai fired into the air where they thought the princess might be. Dav, guide me! Where is she? Where is she? Kai shouted, her SK smoking. Carefree, almost joyously, Vrock evaded the shots and blasts, still fully able to press Davage with her lightning-fast baron. Davage caught sight of a figure creeping up on Larson again. Larson, duck! Larson turned and drew his mims. A clawed hand took his head off at a swipe. His spurting body fell headless. A black hat painter. She tittered in delight, waving her shadow tech claws. You see, I have friends, Vrock said. This keep, this whole area is crawling with black hats. I'm sorry, father, your harlot and your friends have to die. Let me kill them, then your ship, and we'll be off. The black hat began moving in Sig's direction. Vrock's skill was incredible, the Baron moving in a flailing cloud of speed and precision. Davage couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus. There's a painter, Sig. A painter just there. Inez, Kai, to your right. Sig and Inez looked around. All they could see was Davage in a fight with nobody, and Larson laying there dead. They were stuck in the illusion. Davage glanced over to Inez. A painter was coming up on him fast, claws at the ready. Right in front of you, Inez, he shouted. Inez rolled and moved his jet staff in a flurry. Amazingly, the painter deftly avoided the staff. Apparently, she wasn't wearing the Dora shoes. Inez opened his pouch and scattered a bunch of the Carahill figurines about on the floor. She reared back, exposing a horrid clawed hand. Inez, duck! Davage said, managing to parry a blow from the princess. Inez ducked, and Sig sent a bolt of Silvertech whizzing just above his head, and Kai fired a burst, emptying her magazine. When Davage had a moment to look, he saw the black hat painter laying there, her chest blasted open and shot in the face. The princess cursed and drew her Mazin, aiming it at Kai's head. Davage hit the barrel with his card just as she fired, chopping it in two. A partial green beam blinked out of the destroyed weapon and scorched Kai's arm. She fell backward with the force of the shot. In his peripheral vision, he could see more black hats coming into the room, some from the door to the east, and some climbing up from below, deep in illusion. Without the sisters, this fight could end in no way but disaster. Inez, get Kai! There are black hats entering the hall from the interior door. Clang! He couldn't concentrate. This princess was too dangerous. He couldn't focus on the task at hand. She had to be removed from the picture. He tried a dirty trick. He began to waft, the usual wind and air forming around him. Vrock, expecting him to waft somewhere behind her, turned in anticipation. Hardening into full strength, Davage stopped the waft and right crossed her square in the face. The force of the full-strength blow broke her cheekbone and knocked the tiny, light Vrock out of the hall and over the side into the courtyards below. Her baron clattered from her hand and spiraled down in some random direction. Good riddance. Dav, what's our situation? Inez said, wheeling around, seeing nothing. Situation grave, Davage said. He ran to Sig's side and pulled her towards the edge of the hall. How's your arm, Kai? It's wonderful, she said, remagging her SK. Inez emptied his pouch, little carahills scattering all over the floor, some right side up, some on their side, and others resting on their front flippers doing a faceplant. Should we bail, Dav? Should we hit the courtyards and the lower levels? Davage looked over the side. Holgisman, moving with army ant precision, jostled below along with a solid carpet of crawling STTs. The courtyards are all full of Holgisman and Shadow Tech traps. At the far end of the hall, 4 black hats danced into the room. Peeking beneath their robes, he saw they were wearing light slippers, the Dora being dispensed with. They also had little goggles under their black masks, protection against Dav's sight. One black hat pulled up and began a point at Sig. A black Carahill figurine nearby expanded, absorbing the point energy. Davage drew his mims and shot at the black hat, aiming for her head. The tiny bullet sparked off of her sten field. Blast! The Carahill figurine seemed to come to life as it absorbed the point energy. After a few moments, it charged forward, reared back, and blew a gout of bluish fire that passed through the sten without resistance. Screaming, a black hat was enveloped in flames and spun to the floor. The figurine, fins clapping, then vanished. Sight! Davage saw a black hat sending a killing wave of shadow tech. Sig, we need a shield and fast! Sig waved her arm and a thick wall of silver formed in front of them. Crouching behind it, a roaring storm of shadow tech hit it and passed overhead, invisible and unheard. Several white Carahills consumed the shadow tech blast like candy, expanded and attacked the offending black hat. Instead of blowing fire, they seized her by the arms and legs and loped out of the room with her in tow. What is going on, Dav? She cried. Sight. The sten. They were about to be boxed in. It's a sten, Sig, a sten, he cried. Several speckled Carahills came to life. As with the others, Davage saw them absorb the sten energy, grow, and attack. This time they seized the black cat and flew her, legs kicking, out of the room. These Carahill figurines were working wonders. Sight. Another sten. Davage got a speckled Carahill out of his pocket and threw them. The speckles again grew. Another struggling black hat was bodily carried away. Her featureless mask fell away, and she was carried out, exposing a pretty face and long blue hair. Sight. Davage sighed. Sten, Sig, sten! He cried, fishing for more speckled Carahills, but finding none. Sig and Kai desperately digged for the figurines in their pockets. No time. With no other option, Davage dropped his card, collected the 3 of them, and wafted to the other side of the hall, just as a large, deadly sten box appeared where they were. Davage, his heart pounding, blacked out with the effort. The strain of wafting Inez, Kai, and Sig was overwhelming. The last thing he saw were 2 standing black hats and several more entering the room, along with a horde of Holgismen and STTs. Dav! Sig screamed as she knelt down over her fallen husband. Kai and Inez stood there gazing at a hall full of black hats and Holgismen. that appeared to them to be empty and quiet. The only thing giving away the Black Hat's presence, the loping pack of rapidly expanding black, silver, and white Carahills on the floor. Points, TKs, and Shadowtech blasts being hurled their way. Every so often, the Carahills would charge forward, blow fire, or fly out of the room with something invisible held in their jaws. Kai opened her chamber and began blasting as Sig, in tears over Davage, put up another Silvertech wall and struggled to keep it up against the pounding yet unseen and unheard Shadowtech waves coming from the other side. Inez and Kai threw the last of their figurines, Inez expanding his jet staff, ready to fight the hordes he could not see or hear. And with that, we conclude Part 3, Chapter 13, The Shadowtech Conspiracy. So there you have it. As a backstory, before I actually started writing the books, there were some short stories I'd written, some screenplays, some teleplays, dealing with these various characters. And the initial big situation was where Princess Marlith of Xandar, Davage's ex-fiancée, was trying to kill his girlfriend, his latest girlfriend. It wasn't Sig, it was Damona of Ryle. You might remember me talking about Damona of Ryle. And Princess Marlith wanted to kill her. And she hired several Black Hats to infiltrate Damona's ship, which was called the Triumph. And it was supposed to be a simple snare operation, snare her ship, infect it with STTs, and we see how STTs work in these last couple chapters. And it was just supposed to be a simple thing, but Davage and Damona of Ryle foiled the plot, uncovered it, and there was a massive attack, and the sisters got involved, and a lot of Black Hats who came for this snare operation were killed in the process. And Black Hats had a very fearsome reputation. There was a mystique about them, one of fear, one of trepidation, that nobody could really face the Black Hats except for the sisters, and that was a thing for thousands of years, and they had a lot of prestige because of this reputation of basically being invincible to anybody but the sisters. And then this incident where a lot of Black Hats got killed, and not by the sisters, just by Captain Davage, Damona of Ryle, who has no gifts or superpowers like Davage does. She just had a gun, and she had her knowledge of her ship, and she had her crew. Took the Black Hats down, and the Black Hats, suffering from this loss of face, this loss of prestige, wanted revenge on the House of Xandar. And they initially seized all their assets, destroyed some of their vessels, blah, blah, blah. But then, in the interim, these League Lords start stealing Black Hats, Captain Davage being the first with Sig. Captured her, turned her from the darkness, and eventually they got married. And that became kind of not a fad. Well, I guess it was a fad, where these League Lords and League Ladies would go out to zap in space and purposefully seek out a Black Hat to try to capture them and try to turn them from the darkness, with varying degrees of success. A lot of them got killed in the process, but that's not here nor there. So all of a sudden, Black Hats went from these fearsome, invincible Zaffin warriors to people being sought out. Sort of like how haunted houses used to be a thing people avoided. Now people go to haunted houses as an amusement park, as an amusement ride, to go and see the ghosts and watch them dance. So it's a sort of the same thing. The Black Hats had lost that prestige, and they want it back. So they planned a massive revenge against the House of Xandar, where initially they took the 11th daughter of the House of Xandar, Princess Vrock, who was hanging in a meat hook in Bergen. Bergens are known cannibals. They fortified her, they trained her, they souped her up a little bit in some way, shape, or form, made her a very good swordsman with the Baron, either by training, or you can use Shadowtech to enhance a person's skill with things. You basically create an STT and it goes into their head, and they can teach you to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to do. Whether or not that happened with Princess Vrock, hard to say, but she's an extremely good swordsman. You never want to have an inept hapless villain. You want your villain to be a threat. So I wasn't going to let Princess Vrock just be a pushover. No, she's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to deal with her. And only Captain Davage could see and hear her, and he was distracted by black hats starting to infiltrate the Great Hall. So he had to try to guide his people and tell them where the threats were coming from and deal with Princess Vrock. It was pretty tough. The figurines Kara Hill had provided proved quite useful. They were able to thwart Shadow Tech, the Sten, the Point, and TK. In some cases, the Kara Hill figurines would kill the Black Hat, usually with the Point. Because once the Point is started, you really can't stop it unless you kill the Black Hat. But in all the other cases where they cast Shadow Tech or TK or the Sten, the figurines absorbed the energy and then attacked the Black Hat casting it and carried her out of the room to an unknown fate. We will see what that fate is later in the coming chapters, but we're in quite a predicament. As we ended, Davage saw a Sten coming down, and a Sten is like a force field. I think I've described it before, but it's very deadly to the touch. So if a Black Hat creates a Sten around you, they can basically shrink it down to a small size so that you're touching the actual walls of the Sten, and that will kill you, basically shock you to death. Davage gathered up Kai, Sig, and Inez and wafted to the other side of the room, and that effort, that strain, put him to the floor. So Captain Davage is out of the fight. So Sig, Inez, and Kai are stuck in this room, not seeing a thing. They know the Black Hats are there. They just can't see them. So good luck, guys. Next week, we continue Chapter 14, Verlin's Hero. So we return back to the Seeker and focus on Lieutenant Verlin a little bit and see where she came from, how she came to be in the Marines and so forth. This one's I would read that one today too, as this was only 6 pages, but this is a fairly lengthy chapter, so it would make this reading quite long. It's another 11 pages, so that would probably take about an hour to read. So we'll just get to it next week, Part 3, Chapter 14, Verlin's Hero. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.